Jake Morrison felt the metal of his ship twist and scream around him as it fell through the alien sky. Red warning lights flashed in his face while alarms blared. The control panel sparked and went dark. He gripped his seat as the ground rushed up to meet him. The crash threw him forward hard. His head hit something solid and everything went black for a moment. When he opened his eyes, smoke filled the cockpit. His left arm hurt badly and blood ran down his face. The ship had landed in what looked like a forest of purple trees with silver leaves. Jake checked his gear quickly. His plasma rifle still worked. His armor looked damaged but felt solid. Most important, the hidden compartment in his chestplate seemed okay. Inside that compartment was Atlas, an artificial intelligence that no one else knew about. Not even his own commanders. He tried the radio but got only static. The ship was too damaged to fly again. Jake grabbed his rifle and climbed out through a crack in the hull. The alien air smelled sweet and made him feel dizzy for a moment. The purple trees around him stood tall and strange. 3 moons hung in the orange sky above. This was definitely not Earth. Jake had been scouting ahead of the main human fleet when something shot him down. He never even saw what hit him. A sound made him turn around. Through the trees came soldiers unlike anything he had ever seen. They were tall and thin with blue skin that seemed to glow softly. Their armor looked like it was made of crystal and metal mixed together. They carried weapons that hummed with energy. Jake raised his rifle, but there were too many of them. At least 20 soldiers surrounded him in seconds. Their movements were fast and smooth like dancers. One of them said something in a language that sounded like music and wind chimes. A small device on the soldier's belt began to glow. Then Jake heard words in English, though the voice sounded mechanical. "Drop your weapon, primitive creature." Jake looked at his plasma rifle. It was powerful enough to punch through most armor he knew about, but these aliens did not look worried at all. They seemed almost amused by his gun. "I said drop it," the soldier repeated through the translator. Jake had no choice. He set the rifle on the ground and raised his hands. The aliens moved closer. One of them picked up his weapon and examined it like it was some kind of old toy. The soldiers put metal rings around his wrists. The rings felt cold and made his hands tingle. When he tried to move his arms, the rings seemed to get heavier. Some kind of technology he did not understand. They marched him through the purple forest for what felt like hours. Jake tried to remember everything he saw. The plants were strange but beautiful. Small animals with too many legs watched them from the trees. In the distance, he could see tall buildings that looked like they were made of glass and light. Finally, they reached a city. Jake had never seen anything like it. The buildings twisted up into the sky like frozen tornadoes. Bridges of pure light connected them. Vehicles that looked like metal teardrops floated through the air without making any sound. People walked the streets below. They all had the same blue skin and graceful movements as the soldiers. Many stopped to stare at Jake as the group passed by. Some pointed and talked in their musical language. Jake felt like an animal in a zoo. The soldiers brought him to the largest building in the center of the city. It rose up so high that clouds drifted around its peak. The walls seemed to be made of crystal that caught and bent the light from the 3 moons above. Inside, everything was white and silver. The floors felt soft under his boots but made no sound. Strange symbols glowed on the walls. Jake could not tell if they were writing or decoration or both. They took him up in something that might have been an elevator but felt more like floating. The walls around them were clear so Jake could see the city spread out below. It was huge. Millions of lights twinkled in patterns that seemed to have meaning. At the top of the building, they entered a vast room with a ceiling so high Jake could barely see it. The walls curved away in all directions. In the center sat a throne made of what looked like frozen fire. On the throne sat the most beautiful woman Jake had ever seen. Her skin was the same soft blue as the soldiers but seemed to glow brighter. Her hair was silver and moved like it was underwater even though there was no wind. She wore a dress that looked like it was made of starlight, but her eyes were cold as winter ice. The soldiers forced Jake to his knees in front of the throne. The woman stood up and walked down to look at him closely. She was tall, almost as tall as Jake even though he was 6 feet. One of the soldiers handed her Jake's plasma rifle. She turned it over in her hands and laughed. The sound was like bells ringing, but there was no warmth in it. "So this is human technology," she said. Her voice was clear and spoke perfect English.
How wonderfully primitive. She aimed the rifle at the wall and pulled the trigger.
A bolt of blue energy shot out and left a small black mark on the crystal. She looked at the mark and shook her head. Our children play with toys more dangerous than this, she said. And you thought to challenge the Zephyrian Empire with such crude weapons? Jake said nothing. Inside his chest plate, he felt a tiny vibration. Atlas was awake and listening. The AI was already starting to analyze everything it could detect about this place and these people. The woman walked back to her throne and sat down. I am Princess Lyralee of the Zephyrian Empire. You are now my prisoner. Your people's fleet will come looking for you, and when they do, we will destroy them all. She gestured to the guards. Take him to a cell. Make sure he stays alive. I want him to watch when we burn his ships from the sky. As the soldiers dragged him away, Princess Lyralee held up his rifle again and smiled. She had no idea that the real weapon was not the gun in her hands, but the sleeping intelligence hidden inside the armor of the man she had just captured. Jake's cell was a cube of pure white light. There were no bars, no walls he could touch. When he moved toward what looked like an opening, the light became solid and pushed him back. It did not hurt, but it would not let him pass. The guards had left him with water that tasted like flowers and food that looked like colored air, but filled his stomach. They had also left his armor, though they had taken his rifle. Princess Lyralee probably wanted to keep it as some kind of trophy. Jake sat in the center of the light cage and waited. Inside his chest plate, Atlas was working. The AI sent tiny pulses through his nervous system that felt like gentle taps. It was telling him that it was learning about this place. Hours passed. Maybe days. Time felt strange in the white light. Then guards came for him again. They put the heavy rings back on his wrists and led him through corridors that seemed to stretch forever. They brought him to a huge room filled with Zephyrians in fancy clothes. At the center was a table made of what looked like solid starlight. Above the table, images floated in the air like ghosts made of colored light. Princess Lyralee sat at the head of the table. She wore different clothes now, a uniform that looked like it was made of liquid metal. Other Zephyrians sat around the table, all looking important and serious. Bring the human closer, Princess Lyralee said. I want him to understand what he is facing. The guards pushed Jake forward until he stood beside the floating images. He could see they were pictures of spaceships. Human spaceships, his people's fleet. These are your vessels approaching our system, Princess Lyralee said. She waved her hand and the images grew larger. 12 ships, primitive fusion drives, basic energy shields, projectile weapons. The other Zephyrians around the table laughed. One of them, an older male with scars on his blue face, shook his head. It is almost sad, he said. Do they really think such crude technology can threaten us? Princess Lyralee stood up and walked around the table. As she moved, new images appeared in the air. These showed Zephyrian ships. They were beautiful and terrible. Their hulls seemed to be made of flowing water and light. Weapons that looked like captured lightning ran along their sides. This is our fleet, she said. 100 vessels. Each one could destroy your entire force alone. Our energy shields can stop anything your people might fire at us. Our weapons can tear through your ships like they are made of paper. Jake watched the images but said nothing. Inside his armor, Atlas was recording everything. The AI was studying the Zephyrian ships, looking for patterns and weaknesses. More images appeared. These showed weapons that made Jake's blood run cold, beams of pure energy that could cut planets in half, bombs that could make stars explode, shields that could protect entire worlds. We have ruled this part of space for over 1,000 years, Princess Lyralee continued. We have conquered 47 different species. All of them had better technology than your people. She walked back to Jake and looked down at him. Do you know what happened to those 47 species? Jake met her cold eyes. You destroyed them. Wrong, she said with a smile that had no warmth. We improved them. We gave them our technology and our guidance. They became part of our empire and lived better lives than they ever could have on their own. One of the generals at the table spoke up. The human fleet will arrive in 3 days. Should we destroy them immediately or try to capture some for study? Princess Lyralee thought for a moment. We will disable their ships first. I want to examine more of their primitive weapons. Perhaps we can learn something about how such a backward species managed to build spaceships at all. Jake felt anger building in his chest, but kept his face calm. These aliens thought humans were nothing more than smart animals. They had no idea what they were really facing. The princess waved her hand again and new images appeared. These showed a massive structure floating in space near the planet. It looked like a metal moon covered in weapons and shields. This is our orbital defense platform, she said. It has enough firepower to destroy 100 fleets like yours, but we will not need even half its weapons. Atlas sent another pulse through Jake's nervous system. The AI had detected something important about the defense platform. Jake could not tell what, but he trusted Atlas to find whatever weakness existed. Princess Lyrelei gestured to the guards. Take him to the observation deck. I want him to watch when his people arrive. Let him see how hopeless resistance truly is. As they led him away, Jake heard the generals discussing battle plans. They talked about human ships like they were discussing how to swat flies. Their confidence was complete. But Jake had fought in 3 wars before joining the scout service. He knew that the most dangerous enemy was one who thought they had already won. The observation deck stood at the very top of the Crystal Palace. Through walls of clear material, Jake could see the entire planet spread out below. Cities of light dotted the surface like jewels. Ships moved through the sky in perfect patterns. Princess Lyrelei joined him at the window. She stood close enough that he could smell her perfume. It reminded him of flowers that only bloomed at night. Your people call this exploration, she said. We call it invasion. But the result will be the same either way. Jake looked out at the stars. Somewhere among them, the human fleet was coming. Admiral Kate Sullivan was a good commander. She would not walk blindly into a trap. You seem calm for someone about to watch his species die, Princess Lyrelei observed. Jake turned to look at her. Maybe we're not as helpless as you think. She laughed, the same cold sound he had heard before. What could you possibly have that we cannot see coming? We know everything about human technology. Your plasma rifles that leave tiny marks on our walls. Your fusion drives that are slower than our racing ships. Your computers that think in straight lines while ours bend space and time. She picked up Jake's rifle from a table where she had left it. This weapon represents the best your people can create. Watch. She aimed it at a metal target across the room and fired. The blue energy bolt hit the target and left a small melted spot. Then she picked up a Zephyrian weapon from the same table. It looked like a piece of curved glass filled with swirling light. She pointed it at another target and squeezed what might have been a trigger. Lightning erupted from the weapon, not a bolt, but a storm of pure electricity that danced and twisted through the air. When it hit the target, the metal simply disappeared. Not melted or broken. Gone. Do you see the difference? She asked. Your weapons push. Ours erase, Jake nodded slowly. I see it. But what Princess Lyrelei could not see was Atlas working inside his armor. The AI had now mapped 17 different Zephyrian technologies. It had found communication frequencies and encryption patterns. Most importantly, it had discovered something that made Jake want to smile. These aliens had forgotten how to fight real wars. They were so used to being superior that they had grown careless. Their security was designed to stop energy attacks and computer viruses, but humans had learned to fight in ways that had nothing to do with superior technology. Princess Lyrelei put the weapons back on the table and walked to the window again. Your fleet will be here soon. When it arrives, you will see the true power of the Zephyrian Empire. Jake stood beside her and looked out at the stars. Yes, he said quietly. I think I will. Princess Lyrelei seemed to enjoy having Jake as her prisoner. Over the next 2 days, she had him brought to different parts of her palace and the city beyond. She showed him wonders that made Earth technology look like stone tools. They stood in a garden where flowers grew in the air without soil. The plants floated in perfect circles, their roots drinking from streams of pure light. When Princess Lyrelei touched one flower, it sang a melody that made Jake's heart ache with beauty. These gardens have bloomed for 800 years, she said. They require no water, no soil, no care. Our science has made them perfect. Jake watched the floating flowers dance in patterns too complex for his eyes to follow. Inside his armor, Atlas was analyzing the energy patterns that kept them alive. The AI was learning how Zephyrian technology worked at its most basic level. They visited a school where young Zephyrians learned by having knowledge poured directly into their minds. Jake watched children no older than 10 solving mathematical problems that would challenge Earth's greatest scientists. Their teacher was not a person but a ball of light that spoke with a voice like distant thunder. Education that once took decades now takes hours, Princess Lyrelei explained. Why waste time with primitive methods when perfection can be achieved instantly? But Jake noticed something the princess did not mention. The children all gave the same answers to every question. They solved the problems in exactly the same way. There was no creativity, no different approaches, Just perfect repetition, Atlas noticed too. The AI sent a gentle pulse that Jake interpreted as concern. They toured factories where machines built other machines. Jake saw robots that could reshape metal with their thoughts and computers that designed new technologies by dreaming. Everything worked in perfect harmony without a single Zephyrian worker in sight. Manual labor ended for our people centuries ago, Princess Lyrelay said with pride. Why should intelligent beings waste time on tasks that machines can do better? Jake wondered what happened when the machines broke down or encountered problems they were not programmed to handle, but he kept the question to himself. On the second day, Princess Lyrelay brought him to see what she called their greatest achievement. They traveled in a vehicle that moved through solid rock as easily as air. Deep beneath the planet's surface, they arrived at a cavern so vast that Jake could not see its end. At the center of the cavern stood a structure that defied description. It looked like a mountain made of crystal and lightning. Energy flowed through it in patterns that hurt to look at directly. The air around it hummed with power that made Jake's teeth ache. This is our planetary shield generator, Princess Lyrelay said. Her voice carried a reverence usually reserved for holy places. It has protected Zerion for over 1,000 years. No weapon has ever penetrated its defenses. Jake stared up at the massive device. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Lightning danced between crystal towers while screens of pure energy displayed symbols and numbers that changed too fast to read. How does it work? He asked. Princess Lyrelay smiled. The generator taps directly into our planet's core. It processes the energy through quantum computers that make calculations at the speed of light. The shield it creates can stop anything from a single bullet to the explosion of a star. Atlas was working overtime now. Jake felt constant gentle pulses as the AI studied the generator from every angle its sensors could reach. Something about the setup was making Atlas very interested. Who controls it? Jake asked. The quantum computers run everything automatically, Princess Lyrelay replied. They are far smarter and faster than any living mind could be. They make thousands of adjustments every second to keep the shield perfect. Jake nodded but felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cavern's cold air. The Zephyrians had put their entire planet's defense in the hands of machines. Machines that had never been tested against an enemy who thought differently than their programmers expected. They spent hours walking around the generator. Princess Lyrelay explained how her people had built it, using technology from a dozen conquered species. Each edition had made it stronger and more complex. It learns from every attack, she said. If someone tries to break through the shield, the computers study their methods and adapt. The next time, the shield will be ready for that exact type of assault. Jake wondered if the computers could adapt to something they had never encountered before, something that did not follow the rules of energy weapons and direct attacks. As they prepared to leave, Princess Lyrelay turned to look at him with an expression he could not read. You are different from what I expected, she said. How so? Most prisoners beg for mercy or rage against their fate. You just watch and listen. Why? Jake met her gaze. Maybe because I'm learning something. Learning what? That your people have forgotten something important. Princess Lyrelay's eyes narrowed. And what is that? How to fight a real war. She laughed, but this time the sound was not as cold as before. You think your primitive weapons can threaten technology like this? Jake looked back at the generator one more time. I think your technology has made you weak in ways you don't understand. Explain. Your children learn everything instantly, but never learn to think for themselves. Your workers let machines do everything, but never learn to solve new problems. Your defenses are perfect against known threats, but have never faced something truly unknown. Princess Lyrelay was quiet for a long moment. You speak like you have experience in war. 3 of them, Jake said. Against my own species. Humans fight each other. We've been fighting each other for thousands of years. We know every trick, every weakness, every way to find advantages where none should exist. Princess Lyrelay frowned. That seems wasteful and destructive. It is, Jake agreed. But it also taught us never to assume we know everything about our enemies. As they rode back to the surface, Princess Lyrelay was unusually quiet. Jake could see her thinking about what he had said. Maybe for the first time she was wondering if there were things her people did not know about warfare. That night, in his cell of light, Jake felt Atlas working harder than ever before. The AI had gathered massive amounts of data about Zephyrian technology. Now it was processing that information, looking for patterns and connections that the Zephyrians themselves might have missed. Jake closed his eyes and tried to rest. Tomorrow the human fleet would arrive. Princess Lyrelai expected to watch the destruction of his people. She had no idea that everything she had shown him was giving Atlas exactly what it needed to turn her greatest strengths into weaknesses. The shield generator was indeed perfect against energy weapons. But Atlas had discovered something interesting about its quantum computers. They were designed to think faster than any biological mind, but they thought in very predictable ways. They followed logical patterns that could be manipulated if someone understood their programming language. And after 2 days of study, Atlas was beginning to understand that language very well indeed. Jake smiled in the darkness. Princess Lyrelai was right about one thing. Tomorrow would definitely be interesting. Jake woke to the sound of alarms. The white light of his cell flickered and changed to pulsing red. Through the crystal walls of the palace, he could see Zephyrian ships rising from the city, like bright fish swimming up from dark water. Guards came for him quickly. They moved with more urgency than before, their graceful steps now sharp and purposeful. The heavy rings went back on his wrists, but this time the guards also put a metal collar around his neck. "Your people have arrived," one guard said through his translator. "Princess Lyrelai wants you to witness their defeat." They brought him to the highest tower of the palace. The room was filled with screens showing space around the planet. On every screen, Jake could see them. 12 human ships approaching in a loose formation. They looked small and crude compared to the sleek Zephyrian vessels moving to meet them. Princess Lyrelai stood at the center of the room, wearing armor that looked like it was made of captured starlight. Her silver hair was pulled back and her blue eyes were bright with excitement. Around her, Zephyrian officers worked at control stations that floated in the air. "Bring him here," she commanded. The guards pushed Jake to stand beside her. Through the transparent walls, he could see the orbital defense platform hanging in space like a metal moon. Its weapons were already glowing with deadly energy. "Watch closely," Princess Lyrelai said. "I want you to remember every detail when you tell the story to the survivors." On the screens, the two fleets moved closer to each other. The human ships looked like metal boxes with engines attached. The Zephyrian vessels flowed through space like living things made of liquid light. "Admiral Sullivan," Jake whispered, recognizing the lead ship. "You know their commander?" Princess Lyrelai asked. "She's a good officer, smart, careful." Princess Lyrelai smiled. "Intelligence will not help her against superior technology." The first exchange of fire lit up the screens. Human plasma bolts and missiles streaked toward the Zephyrian ships. They struck the alien shields and disappeared like raindrops hitting a window. The Zephyrian return fire was devastating. Beams of pure energy sliced through space and tore into the human vessels. 2 human ships exploded immediately. A third began venting atmosphere from multiple holes in its hull. Jake watched his people die and forced his face to remain calm. Inside his armor, Atlas was recording everything. "As you can see," Princess Lyrelai said, "the battle is already over." But Jake noticed something she did not. The human fleet was not fighting the way he expected. Instead of forming a defensive line or trying to close distance, they were spreading out in a pattern that looked almost random. Ships broke off from the main group and headed in different directions. "Your people are fleeing already," one of the Zephyrian officers reported. "Should we pursue all of them or focus on the command ship?" Princess Lyrelai frowned as she studied the tactical display. "This seems too easy. Why are they not putting up more resistance?" Jake watched Admiral Sullivan's ship make what looked like a desperate run toward the planet's outer atmosphere. 3 Zephyrian vessels moved to intercept it, while the rest of the alien fleet chased the scattered human ships. Then Jake saw it. While the Zephyrians focused on the obvious targets, smaller human vessels were slipping through the gaps in their formation. These ships were running silent, their heat signatures masked and their engines barely operating. The Zephyrian sensors, designed to track high-energy signatures, were missing them completely. "Your admiral is cleverer than I gave her credit for," Princess Lyrelai said. "But clever will not save her." She turned to address the weapons officer. "Prepare the planet killer. If they want to play games, we will end this quickly." Jake felt his heart stop. The planet killer was the weapon Princess Lyrelai had shown him in the recordings. It could destroy entire fleets with a single shot. "Is that necessary?" Jake asked. "Your ships are already winning." Princess Lyrelai looked at him with cold eyes. "Your people chose to resist. Now they will pay the full price." She walked to a control station that rose from the floor like a crystal flower. At its center was a sphere of swirling energy that hurt to look at directly. This was clearly the weapon's targeting system. "Bring him with me," she ordered the guards. "I want him close enough to see everything." They dragged Jake to stand right beside the control station. He was now less than 3 feet from the quantum targeting computer. Inside his armor, Atlas sent rapid pulses of excitement. The AI was finally close enough to attempt what it had been planning. Princess Lirelai placed her hands on the energy sphere. Symbols appeared in the air around her, showing targets and firing solutions. The planet killer was locking onto the scattered human ships. "In 10 seconds, your entire species expansion into this sector will end," she said. Jake saw his chance. Admiral Sullivan's command ship was making another run at the planet, drawing more Zephyrian defenders away from their positions. The human vessels that had slipped through the formation were now in position around the orbital defense platform, though the Zephyrians still had not detected them. "Wait," Jake said. Princess Lirelai paused with her hands still on the targeting sphere. "You have something to say before your people die?" "Just that you're right," Jake said. "Your technology is superior. Your ships are faster and stronger. Your weapons are more powerful than anything we have." She smiled with satisfaction. "Finally, you understand. But there's one thing you never learned," Jake continued. "What?" Jake lunged forward, not to attack Princess Lirelai, but to get his chest plate as close to the quantum targeting computer as possible. The guards reacted instantly, grabbing him and pulling him back, but it was too late. Atlas had made contact. Princess Lirelai laughed as the guards restrained Jake. A desperate attack on unarmed controls? How typically primitive. "I wasn't attacking the controls," Jake said. "I was giving my friend access to them." "What friend?" Princess Lirelai demanded. Jake smiled for the first time since his capture. "The one you never knew I had." Alarms began sounding throughout the command center. The floating control stations flickered and went dark. The screen showing the space battle started displaying random symbols and colors. "What is happening?" Princess Lirelai shouted. "Systems failure in the quantum network," an officer reported, his voice filled with panic. "Something is interfering with the primary computers." "That's impossible. Our systems are unhackable." Jake watched as chaos spread through the Zephyrian command structure. "Your systems are unhackable by anything you've encountered before. But you've never met an artificial intelligence designed by people who have been hacking each other's computers for centuries." On the screens, the orbital defense platform was visibly malfunctioning. Its weapons fired randomly into empty space while its shields flickered on and off. The small human ships that had been hiding around it suddenly revealed themselves and began their attack. But they were not using energy weapons. Jake could see missiles and kinetic projectiles streaming from their launchers, old-fashioned explosives and metal slugs that moved fast enough to punch through anything. The Zephyrian shields, designed to stop energy attacks, offered no protection against solid projectiles moving at incredible speeds. The defense platform shuddered under the impacts. Princess Lirelai stared at the screens in disbelief. "Impossible. Kinetic weapons are primitive, obsolete." "That's what you were supposed to think," Jake said. "While you perfected energy shields and quantum computers, we perfected the art of throwing rocks really, really fast." More alarms sounded. The planetary shield generator, connected to the same quantum network as the defense platform, was beginning to show signs of instability. Atlas was spreading through the Zephyrian systems like a virus, but a virus that understood exactly how each system worked. Princess Lirelai spun to face Jake, her blue skin now pale with shock. "What have you done?" Jake met her eyes calmly. "I've reminded you that the most dangerous enemy is the one who fights differently than you expect." The command center fell into chaos as every system in the Zephyrian network began failing at once. Control stations went dark, then flickered back to life, showing impossible readings. The orbital defense platform was now firing on its own ships while its shields had completely failed. Princess Lirelai grabbed Jake by the shoulders. "Stop this. Call off your attack." Jake looked at her calmly. "I can't stop it now. Atlas is doing what it was designed to do." "Atlas? My companion? The artificial intelligence hidden in my armor. While you were showing off your superior technology, it was learning how all your systems connect to each other." On the screens, they could see Zephyrian ships losing power and drifting helplessly. Their weapons had stopped firing and their engines had shut down. The human fleet, no longer under attack, was regrouping and approaching the planet. "But our quantum networks are impossible to hack," Princess Lyrelai said desperately. The encryption changes millions of times per second. Jake shook his head. Your computers are incredibly fast, but they think in predictable patterns. Atlas has been studying those patterns for 3 days. Once it understood your programming language, breaking in was just a matter of speaking it fluently. An officer called out from across the room. Princess, the planetary shield is destabilizing. The generator is receiving conflicting commands. Princess Lyrelai's eyes went wide with terror. If the planetary shield failed, her entire world would be defenseless. You'll destroy us all. No, Jake said firmly. Atlas isn't trying to destroy your systems. It's taking control of them. As if responding to his words, the chaos in the command center suddenly stopped. The screens flickered once more, then displayed a single message in perfect Zephyrian script. Systems under new management. Then the screen switched to show Admiral Kate Sullivan's face. She was a woman in her 50s with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Behind her, Jake could see the bridge of her command ship. Princess Lyrelai, Admiral Sullivan said, her voice carrying easily through the command center's speakers. I believe we need to talk. Princess Lyrelai stared at the screen. How are you doing this? Your quantum computers are now under the control of one of our artificial intelligences, Admiral Sullivan explained. It has disabled your weapons and shields but left your life support and basic systems running. No one needs to die today. You're bluffing. One small intelligence cannot control our entire network. Admiral Sullivan smiled slightly. Atlas, would you care to demonstrate? The lights in the command center dimmed to half power, then returned to normal. Every screen in the room displayed the same image, a simple smiley face made of dots and lines. Point made, Admiral Sullivan said. Now shall we discuss terms? Princess Lyrelai looked around at her helpless officers, then back at the screen. What terms? You have won. Take what you want. We don't want to take anything, Admiral Sullivan replied. We came here to explore and establish contact with new civilizations. We had no idea this system was inhabited until you shot down our scout. Jake stepped forward. Admiral, this is Scout Morrison reporting. Admiral Sullivan's face showed relief. Jake, good to see you're alive. Has your mission been successful? Yes, ma'am. Atlas has completed its intelligence gathering. We now understand Zephyrian technology and capabilities. Princess Lyrelai looked confused. Intelligence gathering? You mean this was all planned? Jake nodded. Every human scout carries an AI companion designed to study alien technology. When my ship was shot down, Atlas began its work immediately. But you were captured, imprisoned. The best way to study a civilization is from the inside, Jake explained. You showed me your greatest achievements while Atlas recorded everything. Your shield generator, your quantum computers, your orbital defenses. Atlas learned how they all work together. Admiral Sullivan's voice drew their attention back to the screen. Princess, your people have impressive technology, but you've become too dependent on it. Your computers are powerful but predictable. Your weapons are devastating against energy attacks but useless against kinetic projectiles. Your society has forgotten how to adapt. Princess Lyrelai was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was small. What happens now? Do you conquer us? Destroy our civilization? Neither, Admiral Sullivan said. We offer you a choice. Continue this conflict, which will result in both our peoples suffering greatly, or consider a different path. What path? Jake stepped closer to Princess Lyrelai. Cooperation, trade, exchange of knowledge and culture? Your people have mastered energy manipulation and quantum computing. We've learned to adapt and survive against impossible odds. Together we could accomplish things neither of us could manage alone. Princess Lyrelai looked at him with something that might have been hope. You would share your knowledge? Even after we attacked you? Especially after you attacked us, Admiral Sullivan said from the screen. Conflict teaches us more about each other than peace ever could. Now we understand each other's strengths and weaknesses. And if we refuse, Admiral Sullivan's expression became serious, then Atlas will maintain control of your systems while we defend ourselves against further attacks. Your people will be trapped on one world while ours spread throughout the galaxy. In 100 years, you'll be a minor footnote in history. Princess Lyrelai closed her eyes. When she opened them again, Jake saw that the cold arrogance was gone. In its place was something that looked almost like wisdom. You are right, she said. We have grown weak through our strength. We stopped learning because we thought we knew everything. We stopped growing because we believed we were already perfect. She turned to look at Jake directly. Your people fight each other constantly? We used to. We're getting better at talking first and fighting second. But yes, conflict has been a part of human nature for thousands of years. Perhaps that is not entirely a weakness. Jake smiled. No. It's taught us never to assume we can't be surprised. Princess Lyrelay walked to the center of the command center and addressed Admiral Sullivan. I accept your offer of cooperation, but I have conditions. Name them. First, your artificial intelligence must return control of our systems to us gradually. We need time to understand how it infiltrated our network so we can improve our security. Agreed. Second, any technology exchange must be mutual. We will not simply be junior partners in this arrangement. Admiral Sullivan nodded. We wouldn't expect otherwise. Your quantum computers and energy manipulation would advance human science by centuries. And third, Princess Lyrelay said, looking at Jake, I want this human to remain as our first ambassador. He has seen our weaknesses and survived our arrogance. If anyone can help our peoples understand each other, it is him. Jake felt surprised. You want me to stay? You showed me that true strength comes not from superior weapons but from the ability to find new solutions to old problems. My people need to learn this lesson. Admiral Sullivan appeared pleased. Jake, are you willing to take on this assignment? Jake looked around the command center at the Zephyrian officers. They were watching him with expressions he could not quite read. Fear, curiosity, and something that might have been respect. Yes, ma'am. I think there's a lot both our peoples can learn from each other. Princess Lyrelay stepped close to him and spoke quietly. You were right about one thing. We had forgotten how to fight real wars, but perhaps it is time we learned how to fight for peace instead. Jake smiled. That's the only kind of war worth winning. On the screens around them, Atlas began the slow process of returning control of Zephyrian systems to their rightful owners. But the AI left subtle changes in place, improvements that would make their networks more flexible and adaptive. Outside, the human and Zephyrian fleets were moving into peaceful formations. There would be much to discuss in the coming days. Technology to share, cultures to explore, and the beginning of an alliance that neither species had expected when this day began. Princess Lyrelay picked up Jake's plasma rifle from where she had left it on a table. She looked at it for a moment, then handed it back to him. I believe this belongs to you, she said. Jake took the weapon but did not holster it immediately. It's just a tool. The real weapon was never the gun. No, Princess Lyrelay agreed. It was the mind that knew when not to use it.